we go for launch.
5.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
4.
My friend, we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
This whole thing is insane.
3.
Quiet, please. I am analyzing.
Where's the kaboom?
2.
There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
1.
Greetings, my fellow galactic travelers, and welcome back to Planet 8. This is your mission commander Larry speaking to you from our hidden base. Chief Engineer Bob is here by my side as always in the command center, and circling Planet 8 in our orbital spy satellite is Reconnaissance Officer Karen. On this episode of Planet 8, we're going to be talking about the classic science fiction films, The Thing from Another World, John Carpenter's take on the genre. His film was called The Thing. And then there was a prequel that came out years later that was also titled The Thing. Let's kick it over to Chief Engineer Bob to get us started. Bob?
Yeah, all three movies, to a certain extent, were all based on the novel Who Goes There by John Campbell. And to varying degrees of success. The Thing from Another World really just kind of took the fact that it took place in an Arctic base, but they did not take into effect all the shape changing, shape shifting, and identity stealing powers of the Thing because due to budget restraints.
Well, it was like what? Just an alien, or no? It was
James Arness in a big carrot suit.
James Arness, right? Yeah. He was a vegetable-based or plant-based.
Yeah. There was actually supposedly, if you look, there were some storyboards and things for the original movie that did depict sort of a vegetable-type monster with like a human arm that was developing. So they kind of had the idea of the shape-shifting in it, but again, they couldn't pull it off with the budget they had. So James Arness was basically in a vegetable-like Frankenstein-type suit, and he was still vegetable-based, as the alien. But
I remember he had claws too, right?
Yeah. And but they still found the spaceship in the snow or in the ice, and they pull him out in the block of ice, and they've got him there at the Arctic base, and he, eventually escapes and wreaks havoc. But, keep in mind, Thing from Another World was 1951. Mm-hmm. So, back then, I think you had, like, Day the Earth Stood Still and Rocket Ship XM and The Thing. Those basically were the first three that kind of launched the whole sci-fi boom of the 50s. What
was the film with the pods? Those were
Invasion of the Body
Snatchers. Yeah. When did that come out? Like mid to late 50s? That was more 50, like scare the Cold War and stuff, right?
Yeah, and to a certain point, the novel Who Goes There was also kind of influenced by that, because back then you had the Red Scare and who was communist and who wasn't, and
right.
So there was that whole kind of fear that it basically played on that was kind of lost in the Thing from Another World.
I recently rewatched this film. Well, not recently, probably 3 or 4 months ago, and it actually was a very good movie overall, and I love the way that they vanquished the thing at the end of the movie, that iconic electrified field, and they just kind of fry him, right?
That was. Well, they had James Arness was starting to get fried, and then they changed to a smaller actor as he was shrinking, and away he went. But it was amazing because back in, I believe it was 2001, 2002, Keith Aiken and I went to Bob Burns' place down in Southern California. And for those who don't know, Bob Burns has an amazing collection of props and memorabilia from movies. And we were there, and he had all these plans all spread out on his table. And we're like, hey, what's this? And he says, well, every Halloween I do a big setup for my house, and a lot of people that work on the special effects business in Hollywood come out and they help deck out his house every Halloween, and he does a big production. And that year was going to be The Thing.
Oh, nice.
So he had it was almost like an L-shaped set that went around his house. And basically people would go in one end, and it would have the different rooms. You'd have the first room with the ice block. Mm-hmm. You'd have the second room with the dog in the freezer, and then different scenes from the movie. And then you get to the side of his house, down his driveway, and it was the whole scene where the thing gets electrocuted. Mm. And he had an actor would pop out of this door and scare everybody, and then he'd jump back out, and then he'd come back in at the end of the thing, and then they would electrify him, and
that's cool.
And people go out the other door. So I mean, that was pretty amazing. And yeah, I mean, growing up watching this movie, I always thought it was really interesting because of the whole kind of monster on the loose thing, and it was like one of the first kind of science fiction based monster on the loose. Because you had Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and Dracula, and that kind of stuff. Right. But this was more, this was the alien invasion type of thing, which I think, I don't know, was that and Day the Earth Stood Still, were those the first ones? Was there anything before that?
I want to say those were Walker. Do you recall?
Well, I think they're probably two of the earliest ones. I don't have a timeline in front of me, but I mean, I think you have to rank this as one of the very best of the 50s science fiction films. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's clearly one of the best produced. You can say what you want about the monster. I mean, that obviously the using James Arness as the creature is somewhat lacking, but the overall production is just fantastic. Mm-hmm. The cast is great. The way that they do the dialogue is so different from most films. You notice how people seem to talk more naturalistically, and they're kind of overlapping dialogue. Somebody will start to say something, and somebody will kind of talk a little bit over them, but it sounds more like a real conversation. And that was really unusual, I think, in a lot of films, especially back then, but even now. And just the relationships between the characters seemed more mature. It didn't seem like a kiddie movie, you know? Especially you had the relationship between the captain of the aircraft. I think his name was Pat, and then the woman who was the assistant to the chief scientist, Nikki. Mm-hmm. And there's all these allusions to the fact that the previous time he had been out at the base, he had gotten a little handsy with her. Mm-hmm. He had been intoxicated and gotten a little handsy, and it was like a very mature level conversation, which is not something you normally saw in a lot of these types of films. But just all the characters were really well defined, interesting characters, so that even though you didn't have like the creature on the screen all the time, you were still interested in the story, what they were doing, what they were talking about. So I thought it was, it's one of the best films. It keeps your interest. I rewatched it before we did the podcast, even though I've seen this so many times, but it's one of those films I can just watch over and over again.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even though it's just James Arness in a suit, I mean, they don't show him that much. It's a lot of quick cuts. It's a lot of, you see him like being attacked by the dogs. Mm-hmm. You see him, he's lit on fire and he jumps out the window. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you don't see him bursting out of the ice. You don't see him, lumbering down the hallways and things. They keep it up to leave it to your imagination, which is really good.
Yeah, a lot of films did that back then for budgetary reasons, or just that's the way they wanted to film it. They left it to the audience imagination. And I think, Karen, you brought up a good point. The actors, the conversations that they had talking over each other, it was believable. It wasn't like most movies, like you said. And I think that kind of led more towards us believing that the thing, could actually, it was more like we were watching what was going on rather than watching a movie. to a degree, obviously.
Yeah, they really sold it. You really believed that this was happening. And yeah, they did build suspense. I mean, there's some really good scenes in there where they're going through the corridors and they've got, Geiger counter out and they're kind of, like, where is it at? They're getting closer and closer and they're building all this suspense up. Even though you don't see any monster on the screen, you're kind of like, oh, is it going to pop out? What's going to happen here?
Right.
And actually, some of those scenes reminded me of scenes we would see in later films. Like that whole thing kind of reminded me of Alien, and when they're looking for the creature in these really cramped corridors and they're using their little detectors. And I do think this film really had an influence on a lot of later filmmakers.
I was going to say the same thing, like, if not the first Predator movie, the second one, and the Alien and Aliens and those films of the genre. And it's interesting, as much as we love that film, how could it get better? We'll get into the main reason we're doing this podcast. I think we all love John Carpenter's vision of this story. His movie, The Thing, which came out in the 80s, and Kurt Russell played MacReady, the helicopter pilot, and we'll go back to Bob. Bob, did you get to see that in the first run in the theater, or did you watch it on TV?
Yes, I'm old. Yes, I did see it first run in the theater, and I mean the thing about The Thing is that.
Tell us about The Thing.
Let me tell you a thing or two. Now, John Carpenter's The Thing. I think being 1982. That was really one of the last, I think, sci-fi / action films that took it dead serious.
Right.
And you don't have, he doesn't like shoot at the thing and then make a joke about it. You don't have a lot of throwaway humor.
Right.
It's just dead serious. And, I think the same thing to a certain extent can be said about Alien, the first film. Mm-hmm. And after that, then, it all went crazy. But definitely John Carpenter played it straight. Kurt Russell played it straight. And they made a great team because they had done before that they did Escape from New York. Mm-hmm. And then they did a movie where Kurt Russell played Elvis. And then I guess it was after that they did things like Big Trouble in Little China. But definitely The Thing, I think was just it was probably the best of the three, definitely, as far as I'm concerned. And it definitely was much, much closer to the original story than the original Thing.
Now, see, I never read the book or the novella. Karen, did you ever read the novella?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I think I read it back in high school. But
and how about you? Did you get to see the movie first run, or did you catch it on TV?
No, I think I caught it on like a videotape or something.
And your impression of the film, my friend?
I kind of waver back and forth where I like the original or Carpenter's version better. I mean, you could flip a coin, or which day of the week is it? Oh, I like this one. No, I like that one. I like them both. They have different virtues. I love the fact that Carpenter didn't go in and he remade it, but he made his own version. And like Bob said, he cleaved a little more to the original story. So of course we get those crazy Rob Bottin makeups with the tentacles and things flinging everywhere, which really differentiate it from the original one. But also it's just, a product of its time, right? So these guys, and it's all guys, there's no women in this one. These guys are all pretty much antisocial misfit types. They're all just kind of gruff, and nobody seems really happy with anybody else. And, you have the, spoiler alert, the nihilistic ending, right? With, like, everybody wiped out except McCready and Childs, and we don't really know if either of them are really human or not. And, unlike the first one where it was sort of like, the good American know-how, we've wiped out this alien invader and everything's going to be okay, except Scotty at the end, the newspaper man saying, well, watch the skies. But it's sort of like, but we're ready for them. We're ready for them.
Right.
The other one is decidedly more downbeat, which goes with that sort of 1982 feeling. But yeah, I love it. I mean, if it's on TV, I'll watch it. I'll stop what I'm doing and watch it. Carpenter did a fantastic job with it.
Well, and I think it's still, even though, it's all practical effects, which, some work great, some don't quite hold up. But there's still a couple scenes in that thing where you still jump.
Yeah,
oh, definitely.
You kind of know they're coming, but you're going to jump anyway.
Yeah, I think the special effects still hold up today, for the most part. I mean, the dogs, the the autopsy with the torso opening up, and the head dropping off and growing legs.
There's some good lines too, like when what's the Clark, the dog guy, runs back and he goes, "It's weird and pissed off."
Yeah.
And those guys, again, they do a good job, just like the other cast, really selling it when they react to, the weird chimera creatures that are flailing around, mixed up animal and human and stuff, and they're looking at it and they're just like, you feel the same way, like, what am I looking at? That stuff is just like mind-blowing.
I like the film. I like both. And how can you make the original better? And I really believe John Carpenter, it was an homage. But, I think he did one-up them because it's a harder movie to watch than the first one in a good way, because it was almost a reflection not just of the 80s. I mean, we can kind of look around today. Do we all get along? Do we all trust each other? Do we, it was a very dysfunctional group of scientists or researchers up there at that base that really didn't get along with each other. And what was it that they were trying to accomplish? And had the thing not landed and screwed things up, would they have finished their mission or done whatever? I don't know.
Well, it's also like the second part of a story where the first part at that point had not been told.
Yeah,
because they go back to the Norwegian base and they find the ice with the, where the thing had burst out of it. But, they don't know that particularly is what had happened. And again, in the beginning, they have the Norwegian helicopter pilots that are chasing the dog across the ice,
right,
shooting at it, and you don't know until later that that dog was infected, and that's why they were chasing it. And even the dogs are great actors too. If you look at the scenes with the dogs, it's amazing. It's like they put the one dog in the pen with the others, and they're all just kind of like looking at it, and then they all start snarling, and then he bursts open and that. But it was definitely some good training in that one.
Yeah, I like this one shot right before that when they have the dog going down the hall, and he walks, and then he'll stop and kind of look around, and then walk a little bit more,
peek
and
in
then
the door,
look around, and I mean, the dog doesn't normally do that. I mean, they really trained him well, so he looks like he's just like thinking about stuff, and it's very spooky.
Right. Yeah, and I think the second movie was a lot spookier than the first one. The first one had its moments. I mean, definitely. And
I'll tell you something though, Larry. I watched this with my dad I watched the original thing with my dad late at night one time. I came home from, being a teenager and running around and stuff, and I came home and it was on, late, and we were watching it, and he goes, he tells me, I saw this when I was in the Navy. I saw it in a theater, and this thing scared me so much. when I got out of the theater that night, it was like midnight, and I walked down the middle of the street all the way back to my barracks. So that movie, the original one, was scary enough back in its time, I guess.
I suppose so.
Well, like I say, it was one of the first ones, so
Right.
You didn't have anything to compare it to. Now we just kind of take scares for granted, but back then it was early enough that you could get away with simple, easy scares.
And again, your imagination, what was lurking in the shadow? What was that sound?
They say there's nothing more powerful than your imagination. So whatever they could show on the screen probably would not match what you could imagine in your head.
Yeah.
But
and to his credit, John Carpenter tried.
He showed everything, definitely.
He showed it all.
The version that I have of the film was put up by the Screen Factory on Blu-ray, and they have a bunch of additional behind-the-scenes stuff on making the monsters and the aliens and the dog puppets and all that stuff. Really, really interesting what they did pre-CGI. Everything. The goo was practical. The blood was practical. How they got that head to crawl with the tentacles, it was all remote control, radio, this and that. It was pretty intense and pretty interesting. And visually, like I said, a lot of that stuff still holds up today.
Well, I know after the dog bursts open in the pen there, they have this big bunch of goo dog in the middle of the thing.
Yeah.
And I guess Rob Bottin was off at the time, and Stan Winston actually did that part.
Oh, nice.
And they said there were like multiple people under the floor, like puppets with the tentacles and the heads and everything else, and moving everything around. So,
see, it takes a village.
It's like some of the forms they chose too were interesting. I mean, so like in my previous life, I studied biology and everything, but like when they dissected some of the things, or like when the dog first, its head bursts open, it looks sort of like a starfish, and it's just like you see all these different things. Here we go again. You see all these different like organisms or life forms in the big, massive goo creature, So there's tentacles. There's like a starfish. There's like, there's the dog's paw. There's looks like a human hand. It's like
past
it's
lives.
Super disturbing. Yeah.
That was the whole theory, was that as it absorbed and took over different creatures, it maintained or retained those different creatures that it had. So you'd have a dog and a human and a octopus and God knows what else, inside this thing.
Well, it predated Predator by a number of years, but it would have been cool to have seen like a little Predator face pop into that menagerie.
I don't know if any of it was quite as disturbing, though, as the dog with the hobo's face in Body Snatchers, but
oh yeah,
that still really bothers me.
That was pretty bad. There was so I'm watching the Blu-ray and the behind the scenes. I never knew this before watching that special edition, that they had like a little model. I don't want to say Dynamation, but it was stop motion of the alien at the end of the movie where they're going to use the dynamite. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I never knew that before. There's only like seconds of it that's in the actual theatrical version. They had to cut the rest because it they felt it would remove the audience from the picture because it was just not in keeping with the practical alien and creatures and stuff.
Yeah, you can definitely tell it's stop motion. When I rewatched the film, I was like, oh yeah, I remember now they had stop motion in it for just a second.
What do you guys think? I mean, overall, the casting on the film, I think it was cast perfectly.
Oh, it's great.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, each of the actors played their, it's almost like, are they playing a character or is it like mostly them in there? And Kurt Russell, I mean, he's one of my favorite actors. He did such a great job playing MacReady.
Yeah, Kurt Russell was great. And you also had like Wilfred Brimley that was like
Right.
many characters in many films and that. And yeah, he'd be the one. He'd probably have the most fun because he was the one that was always digging inside and doing the autopsies and pulling out all the livers and goo and whatever. And yeah, no, it was. Although he does have that one scene where he just gets to let loose and he goes crazy and he starts takes the axe to the different communication equipment and all that, and he's like screaming and yelling and breaking it all up.
That was also Keith David's first film.
Oh, really?
Who plays Childs, and of course, he's in They Live later on, for Carpenter. But yeah, he had been acting on the stage, I guess, for some time, but he had never done a film before, so this was his first experience in film.
Did a real good job.
I thought he did, really well. Good antagonist for Kurt Russell.
Yeah, definitely. Now, let me ask you guys this, because we kind of touched on this. So the whole Red Scare, the McCarthy hearings, all that stuff was happening when the original film came out, and it kind of led to the angst and the overall feeling of foreboding in the film. Who is my neighbor? Did that work to some degree for the second film? It was done in the 80s. What was the...
Well, actually, I was reading an interview with Carpenter, and he was mentioning that when his version of the thing came out, AIDS was just coming on the scene. And so it was kind of the same thing. No one knew what it was. No one really could tell who had it. And it was actually a blood test that could tell you what has it, who has it. It was the same thing with the thing, is they have to do that test where
heat or whatever.
They heat it up. They've got the little electric wire, and they touch it to the blood to see what reacts. So, and again, people are like obviously afraid of it. And so there was definitely, he drew that parallel, at that time.
That's actually really good.
Yeah, it is.
I hadn't thought about that, but it makes perfect sense.
That was a great scene too, the blood test.
Well, that was one of the jumps too.
Yeah, that was
like,
major.
You don't know which one is going to react, and then suddenly that one reacts, and then the thing reveals himself.
He leads up to it. He says, "I know what's going to happen with this one," and nothing happens, and he's like, "Whoops."
Well, I couldn't understand why he kept holding those dishes in his hand, especially after he already had one of them freak out. It's like, I'm not going to put that in my hand. I'm going to put that over on the table. It's like, what the heck are you doing?
I'm going to tape this wire to this 10-foot pole.
I will say, though, that was one of the favorite scenes of me and my friends after we saw that movie, when I think it's Palmer, after they test him and the blood goes everywhere, and then he just starts shaking on the couch, and the other guys are screaming. And so me and my friends, if we'd be sitting on a couch or something, sometimes I would just start doing that shaking the thing, and they knew exactly what it was. They'd be like, ah. So yes, our little nerdness we would express in these various ways.
The life of the party.
Yes. Of course, my head wouldn't explode and I wouldn't grow tentacles. I kept waiting for it to happen. I never did that.
But also with John Carpenter's The Thing, do you see who did the music for that?
Yes.
Ennio
Morricone. So, yeah, it was definitely... we had a discussion with David Schechter a few episodes ago about movie music. And, the John Carpenter's The Thing definitely has some pretty creepy music in it.
And it really, really sets the mood and the tone for that film. I mean, it's... matter of fact, that Sound Factory edition has a little bit on the music and how they scored it. So... it was...
Well, it's interesting, too, because he uses synthesizers and stuff just like Carpenter does, and he definitely gives it a Carpenter feel.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let me ask you guys this. So we talked about the first and the second. There was actually a third, or a prequel to The Thing. And Bob, what was that called?
It was called The Thing. And, I watched it fairly recently. And, the fascinating thing about that movie is they went back to John Carpenter's film, and a lot of the scenes in this version of The Thing were recreations of scenes in John Carpenter's The Thing. Like they would go and they'd look at something in John Carpenter's movie and go, okay, this axe is in the wall. There's an axe sticking in the wall. How did that get in there? And then they'd write a whole scene leading up to the axe being into the
How the
wall.
Swedes set it up so that...
So this was basically the Norwegian camp and what happened before John Carpenter's The Thing leading up to that. In fact, at the end of the film, the dog escapes with the thing inside, and the helicopter goes after it. And that's the end of this movie, which leads right into the beginning of John Carpenter's The Thing, where the helicopter's chasing the dog across the ice. So if you cut the credits on the 2011 version, it would lead right into John Carpenter's version.
I've seen it twice, and I didn't care for it too much the first time. The second time, it really worked a lot better. And I'm going to try doing that, though, watching the third film and then the second film and seeing, because I didn't notice all the like acts and stuff, but I did notice the hunting for the dog was almost the same helicopter and the angle and stuff. And I'm like, did they use the footage from the John Carpenter's film?
I don't think they did. I think they redid it. But yeah, I mean, even like we discussed with John Carpenter's The Thing, where they went back and they found the ice where the thing had broken out of it.
Yeah.
Well, in this movie, they show the thing breaking out of that ice.
Right.
So yeah, and they definitely took a lot of cues from John Carpenter's film, and instead of following the cues, they went back and led up to the cues.
Okay. Did you see this at the movie theater also, Bob? Or you saw
no, actually, even though it's a newer film, I missed it in the theaters for some reason. But I saw it, I got the DVD and later Blu-ray after. But
yeah, I did the same thing, DVD. How about you, Karen?
Yeah, I saw this on TV at some point, and I don't have a lot to say about it. I guess I wasn't real impressed with it. I just didn't feel the need to tell the story. I don't know. It just didn't seem to me, that it was essential to know what happened, and it just, it didn't do anything for me, really. So I guess I have nothing to contribute, guys. I just it didn't really do anything for me. So as far as I'm concerned, there's two Thing movies I can talk about, and that's not one of them. And
that's that. In watching the John Carpenter movie with the Norwegians, not the Swedes, going after the dog, and then the movie starts with McCready and all those guys. It's almost like a James Bond movie where you always have him finishing off his last mission, and then the new story, from Russia with Love then begins or whatever. And you never really know what the whole story was with the, 5-minute ending of his past mission. That's kind of what this was to me. It was like, they're chasing this dog and stuff. But we had the opportunity to see what that movie was.
Well, what led up to it.
Right.
And, you mentioned the Norwegians, and the interesting thing is, in The Thing, in the 2011 version, the Norwegians there were actually popular Norwegian actors.
Oh, really?
In Norway, they were like big name actors, and they brought them over here. And of course, we didn't know who they were.
Right.
But they were definitely good actors. But it turns out, they were like A-list stars over in Norway.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this, because it's been a while since I saw the film. What I remember is the woman was infected, right?
Right.
And she's in that little snowmobile. And rather than doing herself away, killing herself, did she drive off? Did she survive?
I think she drove off.
So in effect, the Thing is alive in that woman and that dog.
Yeah.
So there is another story to be told. Did she make it? Yeah. Did she make it to civilization or whatever? Okay, so along with the
They
listeners,
left that open for a sequel, but
yeah, along with the listeners, we're gonna have to go back and watch that movie and see what happened. No, just kidding.
well, no, I know, because I remember they're like, it's in the dog, and the dog like takes off, and that's when they start chasing it. But
well, let me ask you guys this. So we'll go back to the John Carpenter version of The Thing. You're a scientist or a helicopter driver or a cook, whatever, and you're up in this outpost, and all this alien crap starts going down. How would you react? What would be your first? Would you kind of try to quarantine yourself, or would you actively work, try to get a group together to figure this out? I mean, what would you, with all the knowledge that we have in all these genre films and comic books and books and whatnot, who would like to go first? Or if you guys want me to go first,
I would probably just like collect every coat, blanket, warm thing I can find, and hide in a meat locker or something. Whatever is like the strongest door in the place.
No, okay,
but
all right.
No, I mean, yeah, I would probably. I doubt I would just like run out after it or grab a gun and try to do something.
Yeah, join in the hysteria.
No, I would self-preservation. I'd hide somewhere.
Well, Karen?
Well,
putting you on the spot.
Every cell of this thing is capable of infecting a host. Mm-hmm. You'd probably have to raise the entire place to the ground, including everyone in it. So, yeah, you probably just have to like wipe everybody out.
You go with the nuclear option.
Yeah, you have to, because the thing is if you even have like one, not even a drop of its blood, but even a single cell gets into another organism, it'll take it over, right? So right. You can't possibly. It was like at one point one of the characters in Carpenter's version says, we better prepare our own food and we should only eat out of cans. I mean, even that is difficult because you can't see these minuscule cells, right? If there was like some of those scenes where like these things are getting shot and there's blood spray or whatever the goo is, you might have a droplet on your hand you don't even see, and then you rub your face, or it's like it's gonna get you sooner or later. So you got to prevent the rest of the world from getting it. So you gotta nuke it from orbit. It's the only way to be sure, right? So.
Well, even in John Carpenter's The Thing, I think it's Wilford Brimley again, that he's looking at those fine computer graphics from 1982, and it says that if it spread, that it could take over the world in, what was it, like 27,000 hours after first contagion or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, think about that. There's just, you can't let it out of the Antarctic.
How would you convince everyone to hole up in the middle of the camp and get blown up?
Well, I don't think you can, so you're going to have to just take matters into your own hands.
Well, that too, but it's like, if you're infected, do you know you're infected?
I think you do. Karen, what do you think?
That's a good question.
Or do you just have to like sacrifice yourself along with everyone else to save the world?
Well, that dog was infected, right? And the dog was kind of checking out the rooms and looking back and forth.
Yeah, but he had like an intelligence, though.
There's different ways to get infected, right? You could have like a tiny cell get in you and it might take a long time to take over, but then there's like the other ways where like the big masses of the creature physically absorb a person and then like spit out a duplicate of that person. Okay. I think those duplicates know that they're duplicates.
So there are varying degrees.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is that what you're saying? There are like varying degrees of...
Like if you just had like a few cells get in you, you're still mostly you. Yeah. It would take time for it to take you over.
It's kind of like hives. You kind of get like a rash first and then it just kind of takes over your whole body.
Chicken pox, he's taking over the world.
I'm just trying to, my little pea brain's trying to get all these high finagling scientific concepts you two are throwing back and forth at
trying to grasp the whole situation. See, Larry wouldn't survive because he'd be sitting there trying to think.
Exactly. I'd be questioning and pondering, and then I'd become one of the damn things.
I'd just be running around shooting all of you and setting you on fire.
That's right, and I'll be hiding.
Well, I know where you're going to hide now.
Find
in the
me.
meat locker.
That's right.
He's always in the meat locker. Just hang on a minute.
You can't get me. It's all metal walls. You can't burn me out.
You're kind of cornered, though. Well, they could use dynamite.
Well, that's true.
You're kind of cornered. There's no exit. I mean, it's almost like Night of the Living Dead. Do you go in the basement or you stay up top?
Oh, don't start that argument.
Well, at the end, the basement was the place to go. Right?
Well, other than for her mother. Yeah, I mean.
He had to retreat in the basement at the end. It's like, that was it. He could have just said, "Hey, it's me," though, instead of standing there and getting shot.
Well,
I'm not even sure that would work in that part of the country.
That's true. All right, so back to the thing. We can do a Night of Living Dead episode later.
We'll need to, actually. That's something we haven't really tackled. Was zombies and whatnot. But yeah, so getting back to the thing. Okay, so Bob would hide in a meat locker. Karen would you contact?
She would go ballistic.
So yeah, Karen. So would you just take a gun and just start like shooting people, or would you call high command and ask for like a nuclear drop?
No, because they might do something stupid and send out a rescue team or something. You just got to take matters into your own hands.
But remember, Wilford Brimley destroyed all the radios, so you can't radio out.
Well, I'm almost thinking Karen's like that character in our little.
She is Wilford Brimley.
Probably.
She's gonna go around. I'm not gonna let you guys leave. Bob runs to the meat locker, and I'll be like, "What the hell's Karen doing? Why'd Bob go in the meat locker? What is this itchy rash on my arm?"
As Larry tries to figure out the psychological ramifications of the whole thing.
If it was me and I came to the realization, I don't know that I'd go around like shooting everyone, but I hear what you're saying, Karen, because no one can escape. And ultimately, that was one of the most perfect endings to a film. There was MacReady with Childs, not knowing who was human, who wasn't, and they were going to wait out each other, freezing to death. Now, here's the scary part, and what I thought a third movie would have been interesting is eventually someone's going to go to that base and find the base burned, records and everything destroyed, but 2 frozen people in the snow that may or may not be infected, and they're probably going to do an autopsy or at least bury them, and that entails them thawing the bodies out.
Well, if they're infected, then they're still alive, right?
But we wouldn't know it until it was too late. And when I say we, I mean humanity.
But no, I mean, definitely, that's the whole thing. It's like you can't go around shooting people because then you're spreading their blood and you're spreading their cells and whatever.
Well, you just burn everything.
Oh, yeah, you got a flamethrower everywhere.
You've given this a lot of thought, Karen.
It's like a standard, contamination protocol. You just burn everything.
So let me ask you this, Karen. MacReady and Childs, they freeze, right? That's a foregone conclusion. You get to do a third movie. What happens? You go there. You're a scientist. You're like, what the heck? Do you thaw the bodies or not?
Well, if you didn't know what had happened, you'd probably. Well, hopefully you're in a good, containment suit. Mm-hmm. Good biocontainment suit, and you have the bodies taken somewhere, and in a very, secure environment. But you wouldn't know what had happened, so you'd probably start, cutting and taking samples and then the whole problem probably starts up again because.
Well, it would be interesting because a research team or whoever would go there and be like, who smashed all the equipment with an axe and why? Mm-hmm. And why are, what are these, that dog thing got blown up with the dynamite and whatever, and the 2 guys are frozen outside. And Bob's frozen in a meat locker.
Well, here's the other scenario. Mm-hmm. So Larry and Karen, you guys are out there, just like McCready, and you guys are like face to face in the snow. Now, obviously, Karen would just torch you right there.
Or shoot me.
Sorry.
Or both.
You're torched.
It's all right.
You're gone.
Yeah.
So, Karen, you're left. You're the only one left. You don't know if you're infected or not. So, what do you do?
Well, I'm assuming I am, so then I have to also, burn myself. So yeah, that's going to be fun.
Unless a realization, a second voice starts talking to you in your mind, saying, and Karen's like, okay, I just killed my best friend, burned him, now I'm gonna have to burn myself. And then the other voice is like, no, you don't want to burn yourself, Karen, you want to live.
Is it Mickey?
No, the other voice would be saying, let me out of this damn meat locker.
God help us if we were in charge of Hollywood. Hey guys,
though, thinking about that ending, though, that I don't think we would ever see. Well, I don't want to say ever, but you don't see endings like that nowadays.
No,
that would be so unsatisfying to most audiences.
Well, there's not a satisfactory ending to that scenario.
Yeah.
No, I think it was the perfect way to end that film, but I think Karen makes a great point. And what other film have we seen end that way? I mean,
The Mist.
There was a movie about The Mist.
You never saw The Mist?
That was pretty depressing.
Spoiler alert, that was one of the most depressing endings of any film you'd ever want to see.
Yeah.
What was The Mist is the not John Carpenter.
No, that's The Fog.
The Fog. Yeah, The Mist is
Yes, The Mist was denser than The Fog.
And there's all these like creatures in the mist and all that. And
they're in a grocery store, right?
Yeah, and the guy escapes.
Spoiler alert.
Escapes.
Yeah, sorry.
Spoiler alert, this guy escapes with his family. And he's got a gun. There's 5 of them, there's 4 bullets. And if you're caught by these creatures, it's like a horrible, horrible, horrible death.
Yeah.
So he figures, they're not going to get out of this mist. There's no way. So he kills his family so they don't suffer. And there's not a bullet left to kill him. And then suddenly, as he's driving, the mist dissipates and the army's there. And it turns out that they would have been saved. But he had just killed his family, thinking it was a mercy killing. But yeah, so I mean, that was, if you want that kind of an ending, that's probably the other film definitely that has a depressing ending like that.
I recall that maybe I saw a made-for-TV movie of it. It's Stephen King, right? Was it based on a short story? I think so. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we digress. Chief Engineer, I think we have someone coming across on the interocitor. Can you tune in? Hello. Okay.
Look at that.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest, Bob Eggleton. He is visiting via interocitor. He is on planet Earth. Welcome to Planet 8.
Awesome.
I understand you are a world-renowned illustrator.
Yes.
And we have it on good authority that you're going to be working on some illustrations for the latest edition of Who Goes There?
Yes, actually they're done. The art's all done. It's in, and now it's up to the publisher to make it into a book. Awesome. John Betancourt, who runs Wildside Press, and you can go find him on the net, Wildside Press. He called me up back in, it must have been September, October, and he said, hey, I've got this I'm now the kind of the rights manager, and I've acquired the rights to John W. Campbell's works. And one of them we just discovered in all the files was a longer version of The Thing. It's a novel-length version of The Thing, and not a novella. I guess the original was a novella. So he said it's a longer version. And oh boy, this is I want to publish it. And what would you if we did a Kickstarter, what would you charge me to do the cover? And it's like, so we discussed money options. And he said, if I get like $15,000, we can afford you to do the. And I was going to give him a break anyway. I wasn't going to say no to the thing. Believe me, I was like, this is like, I already illustrated. I finished illustrating the Foundation trilogy for Isaac Asimov, which will be out from MBI Books probably this year, I hope. And I certainly wasn't going to be, going to kick off doing the, going to say, no to the thing. And so anyway, the next thing happened is that a number of sites picked it up. Sci-fi.com was the biggie, and another one, a couple of others, and the Kickstarter, it went into over $100,000. I don't remember what the final thing was, but all of a sudden John had a fortune to play with, a relative fortune to make a book. And so now I said, well, why don't we add in a color frontispiece, and why don't we do 6 black and white interiors for it? And so now more money's involved, which is nice. And he said, great, let's do that. And that's how it kind of took off. And it's being packaged as a book called Frozen Hell. And John has got a sequel that he's written to his own sequel to Campbell's book. And he's putting that in there too as well. And so you'll get the whole novel, the longer version of Who Goes There, and you'll get his kind of follow-up in his own way, that he's done his own version of it, of kind of a sequel, if you will. And anyway, so the nice part is nice being able to kind of illustrate these things, and I illustrated them in an old pen and ink and scratchboard style, which in the inside, so it lends a kind of a vintage feel to it. I wanted to make it feel kind of 1940s, 1950s, and it's a fun book to do. And Campbell is very scientific. I mean, his scientific techno babble, I want to call it, if you don't mind me saying that, it's really thick. I mean, he's really, really thick. He gets into the whole, he's got a book called The Ultimate Weapon, and there's a great line from it, and it said, "Those positrons are sure excited by those electrons, aren't they?" Like that, there's all this scientific talk, and as for, he laughed, and I find that pretty funny. So I went into it thinking, I'm a real big fan of the movies, of the all 3 movies, and we'll get into that. And I'm a big fan of that, and I like I just like the source material too, because it's kind of really one of the really first popularized monster from outer space kind of movie stories. And of course, this was picked up by Howard Hawks, and he made it into this 1951 movie that was kind of an allegory for Cold War paranoia. And it was still, there's something about that movie that's just so highly watchable. It's like you just can put it on, and you've seen it a million times, but I'll see it 1,000,001. It's just that good. And a little old-fashioned, but that good. And then, of course, the John Carpenter one is, for me, that's a mainstay, because it's just, you got so many great drop-dead funny lines in it. I mean, there's a sense of humor in it that when I first saw it in the theaters, I knew they were going. John Carpenter said he wanted to go back to the source material, and when you're reading the original book, there's McReady and Norris and you get all the characters, and so in my head I'm picturing, oh my God, that's Richard Dysart, that's such and such, and I'm thinking of because they really went back to, John Carpenter really went back to the source material on it. And then, of course, they made the 2011 The Thing, which was kind of, I think the failure of the movie was just, I just think it was poorly marketed. I didn't think it was a bad movie. I thought it was a terrific film, but it's like, I just thought it was poorly marketed, and maybe I could subscribe to the idea that they used a little bit too much CGI, unlike the 82 one, which you just didn't know what was going to pop out of what next. You know what I mean? That was half the fun of it, was like Rob Bottin's on-set physical effects, and you had no idea what you were going to see next. And this one was a little more kind of a predictable kind of looking thing, and it's interesting. But there's talk in the works, and I got this from a high-on source. There's talk in the works that they're thinking about yet another version in the film version of The Thing, and this would stick more closer to the original book, apparently.
So that one won't be a prequel, sequel. It'll be an actual remake then.
That'll be like its own, like as if nothing else ever happened. It'll just be its own thing, pardon the pun. It'll just be its own, its own movie. And it's apparently in the chit chat phase and the talking stage. And what it takes is it takes a good director who's willing to say, okay, I'm going to go all out and full tilt, and I'm going to, do my version of what this could look like, or whatever. And what I liked about the 2011 version of it was that they had the Norwegian cast that was it really tied in beautifully with the 1982 version. And so they had this, except for was it Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who I guess was the sort of an ingenue in movies, and then the rest of the crew, they were kind of like a lot of unknowns, frankly, and I just think that when they called it The Thing, everybody said, well, it's a remake of it. It's like, and I'm thinking, well, no, actually, it's a prequel. And I think that it would have been better if they had labeled it something like The Thing, Genesis, or The Thing, The Beginning, or something like that. I mean, that I think might have been probably a little more of a way of presenting it than it being a sequel.
Well, we were talking earlier in the episode about the fact that all those Norwegian actors were actually very popular actors in Norway.
Yeah.
They were, sort of like their A-list actors, but no one over here had ever heard of them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you ever saw the movie Troll Hunter, it's an absolute treat to see a kind of movie made completely with, Norwegian subtitles, and it really takes the mickey out of the whole government way of working, that they have, and so I think they just did a good job with it. I think they did a good job, but it was, I just think that it was interesting because they simply just didn't market it as well as they probably could have. They really, it was kind of like The Thing, and I went like, so people literally were saying to me, is it a remake of the 82 version, or is it a sequel? I was like, no, it's actually a prequel to the 82 one, and I'm not sure that was really transmitted. I didn't think they did a real good job presenting that in the trailers or in the promotion of the promotion for the movie. Like, they didn't say that it was set in 1982 and so on.
Well,
whatever the Norwegian word for thing is, maybe they should have used that as the title.
That was another friend's idea. He said the exact same thing, exactly that. He said it should have been like a Norwegian title and, something like that. And he said it might have been a little bit more of a curiosity factor, in something like that. But I think it's an interesting, it's going to be a popular concept no matter what happens. I mean, the 82 movie was a failure when it came out because it was competing against a much more friendly alien next door in theaters, E.T. And I remember it was like the cinema I saw it in was a double cinema, and one theater had The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and the other one had E.T. And so where do you think the crowds were? They were in E.T. And then a friend and I went to see The Thing, and all we had heard was that it's just one of these. It was for the time super gory, and Kurt Russell was in it. So I said, well, let's go see it, and we did, and it sort of became a kind of a favorite of mine ever since. And, and my wife, it's one of her very favorite movies. So you married the right person when it's one of her favorite movies too,
Right.
When when you got the job to illustrate and do art for the book, how much input do you have versus how much input does the publisher have? Do they actually like say, I want a picture of this and a picture of that?
No.
You get to go in and choose?
I get very lucky. I'm in a kind of a state in my career, and this is kind of cool, where the publishers and they just say to me, give me a Bob, give me a Bob Eggleton, like that. And I knew you'd love this. You're a creature guy. You're a monster guy. And this is what John Betancourt actually said to me. He said, I knew you were going to like this because he said, you're a monster man. And he said, you know, this is the kind of thing that would be right up your alley. And so what I wanted to do, I kind of gave us the cover. That right on the cover is the creature, and he's kind of staring back at you, and around him you're seeing like eyes, and you're seeing kind of a head melting into him and things like that. And this is all like, if you look at it, it subtly resembles the gates of hell. You see these two pylons of ice, and there's sort of this glowing light from behind it. And then in the inside illustration, which is in color, I did the Aurora Australis in our, you see that in Antarctica, and I did that, and it kind of like you're seeing something burning its way through the Earth's atmosphere and going to crash in the ice, and that's our opening frontispiece for it, and I felt that was appropriate. But I mean, sometimes people say, maybe leave the monster up to people's imagination. Well, in this case, it's too much of a fun monster to leave alone, So I couldn't resist giving him to you on the front cover, and it was like, and it's going to be a nice book. They're going to do a real nice book with it, sewn stitch binding, the whole 9 yards. And the nice part was that John just said, just go to town, have fun with it. He said, just have fun with it,
That's great.
That's
cool. So when you go through and read the story, then how do you, or what is it that popped out to you that said, okay, I want to illustrate this part or that part?
Well, I was in Australia reading it, I was with my in-laws down there. And of course, it's very hot in Australia, so you don't go out in the day. So I was inside reading a bit, and I was jotting down ideas of what I wanted to do. And I figured let's show them as they discover the spaceship, and let's show them as they're walking off into the wilds of the snow and things like that. And then kind of another one with the encampment and stuff like that. So it's like I just wanted to have some fun with it, and not I don't think illustrations should be interior artwork should be too overly descriptive, because people are just going to form their own images in their own mind. So all it can really be is just kind of like, in a sense, page decoration, and it faces the text so that it gives you an idea of and then in two of the illustrations I just did pictures of the creature itself, because I just think so much attention is given to that. And it's real interesting what Campbell was very much into the scientific aspect of things, and he really, really went off he went out for the real scientific stuff. So that was, you got to keep that in mind when you're reading it. And so and I think the ultimate thrill, the real thrill, was the fact that I got a fan letter from his grandson, who John Hammond Campbell, or John Campbell Hammond, I think his name, or whatever it is, and he went on and told me how much he loved this, and thank you for honoring my grandfather's work. And I was like, oh, great, this is awesome. So, it's a good thing.
Anytime you can do something you love and get paid for it, it's a good day.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's like and that's what I do. I mean, I do, I've managed to be able to do a lot of the things I love, and right out of my childhood, whether it's the Thing or the Creature from the Black Lagoon or Godzilla or this sort of thing, and it's all just for me. It's all just I just try to keep everything fun, and despite everything going on around us, and it's I just try to keep everything pretty much fun, and this piece was this project was really, really interesting to get it to where it had to reach its beauty point. That being was that I was a little bit confused with the main cover illustration as to which way to exactly go. And I sat around thinking about it for a very long time. I mean, like an inordinately longer time than I usually do on these kind of things. And then I said, well, why don't we do this way? And why don't I do this? And ultimately I was going to do one idea, and then that whole idea just kind of folded up, and I said, this is I came up with literally just looking at it from a different angle. I said, let me just do this better idea. And that's what I did, and that's what I came up with. And so it's always good when that happens.
Yeah, that's good. Let me ask you this. Where can our listeners find you on the internet? Do you have a specific
I'm on
website?
Facebook. Mostly Facebook I have a website, but it's really sorely out of date. But Facebook, I have a public page, and I know not everybody sees everything public. I have some private stuff that I share just with friends, but I have a general public page, and I'm just simply known as Bob Eggleton, and then there's the Bob Eggleton Face group, which showcases all my artwork, and that was set up by my friend Steve O'Driscoll, and he's over in Ireland, and he just wanted to have a Bob Eggleton fan page, so that's what he made. So it's kind of cool, and that's kind of like the best stuff to. I'm very active on those pages, and that's really the place where you really can see the real me, for better or worse.
All right, great. Well, we're going to also upload that information to our webpage for this episode. So, yeah, those of our listeners that want to reach out to you, they can go ahead and follow that link. And, Bob, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us.
Awesome. I enjoyed doing it. I'm sorry what my voice sounds like. My voice sounds like gravel, but it's like that's what's happened with this aforementioned cold cough virusy thing that we've all had,
Exactly.
It only hurts when I laugh.
We've already done the blood test. We know that you're not a representation of the thing. You are exactly Bob. So
yeah, exactly. It's good. But this is part of, this has been sort of part of pop culture and part of our lives really for many, many years. And to do the source material, that was a real honor for me. And I was really, really happy to do that. And, it's funny because some of the fans of the movie, I'm not sure if they exactly knew that the story was actually written in the late 1940s, and it was made into a movie, and then made into another movie, and then made into a prequel to that movie. So it and it's still ongoing. I mean, there's talk, rumors that there will be another Thing movie, and again, it will be something complete, not within the franchise that we know, but something completely other, and sticking primarily more to the book than the other ones were.
Right. Well, we'll wait and see what happens. But until then, we're looking forward to seeing the illustrations you have in the book coming out, and whatever other projects you have coming out in the future. So, and you take care, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks much. Enjoy. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hey, it's at that point in the podcast where we have our censor sweep, and today Chief Engineer Bob has something sensational, amazing, and wonderful to share with us. So take it away, Chief Engineer Bob.
Well, recently, coming out on Blu-ray from Discotech Media is Tetsujin 28, which they call Shin Tetsujin 28. I guess Shin's like the new catchword now. Oh. Shin is like Japanese for new, like Shin Godzilla, whatever. Anyway, they're calling this Shin Tetsujin 28, but it's the 1980 version of Tetsujin 28, also known as Gigantor. Oh. And I always loved the TV series back in the 80s, and they're finally releasing it on Blu-ray, and it looks great. And the prints that they got, it's really beautiful, and it's all Japanese with subtitles. And I know that a dub does exist. It's not on here, but Fred Ladd, who basically produced and dubbed the original Gigantor and Kimba the White Lion and Astro Boy, did a dub of Tetragen 28, calling it Gigantor. And I think it played in syndication for a little bit. I might have seen like half a dozen episodes, but this is definitely, it's Japanese with English subtitles, and the series is a lot of fun, and it's really kind of nice to see, whether it's Discotech or whether it's Sentai Filmworks or whatever, that are bringing out some of this older animation, whether it's Tetragen 28, God Mars, Ghost Shogun, or even older things like Captain Harlock and Cutie Honey and Devilman and Gatchaman. But keep your eyes out definitely for Tetragen 28, available on Amazon and anywhere that finer Blu-rays are sold. And you'll definitely enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
Very good. Thank you, Chief Engineer. On that note, this will conclude this transmission from Planet 8. We would like to thank all of our intergalactic audience for listening. Be sure to head on over to our website at www.planet8podcast.com, where you can get more information on this episode's topic.
For more conversation, find us on Twitter at Planet8Cast.
Or on Facebook at facebook.com/Planet8Podcast.
We want to thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode. We look forward to your input and opinions. Until next time, this is Planet 8 signing off. End transmission.
By George, he's got it. It is the end.